it's looking like I have permanently increased my baseline on Spotify. So here's my Spotify for artists, and what I have in front of me is the beginning of my song release up until today, and we'll dive into specific details. I went from around 800 to 900 streams per day to over a few weeks ago, I showed you every metric in my Spotify for artists for my new song that dropped on Spotify, and I ran a promotion campaign so that I can push it to new people and hopefully trigger the algorithm. And when I published those stats, some people had a lot to say about it. Some artists shared how they also use playlisting as their main model of getting traffic, but others actually had a huge criticism of playlisting and thought that my growth was completely fake. In fact, this commenter says, this strategy is just building the illusion of growth. As soon as you get out of playlisting or the algorithm cools down, it will fall off a cliff. And he's not wrong. Playlists are temporary, but I think he's confusing the temporary aspect of playlisting with its usefulness, and it is extremely useful, especially for triggering the algorithm. I'm going to throw some stats up on the screen to show you the before and after my playlisting campaign. And as you can see, not only did the algorithm trigger in a massive way, but there was a huge stickiness to my listenership after the playlisting campaign ended. And I don't think I would have gotten there this fast any other way in just 3 weeks. Okay, so my algorithm increased 20x. I now have 20 times the amount of streams on Spotify. But you might be thinking, just like this commenter was thinking, that, well, my engagement rate was too low. I didn't get enough saves. I didn't have enough engaged listeners. I should have just used meta ads instead. Which is a fair point. I love meta ads. I use them all the time. In fact, all of my playlisting clients, I encourage them to do our meta ad service as well so that they can get more followers on Spotify. We call it follower growth ads. But here's the thing. There's a huge difference between optimizing for engagement and optimizing for what I was trying to do, which was triggering the algorithm. And I'm not saying that one goal is better than the other. I just didn't optimize for engagement because I didn't even run meta ads on my song yet. I only did playlisting because my goal wasn't a certain engagement rate. My goal wasn't a certain save rate. My goal was to activate the Spotify recommendation engine so that I can get a higher monthly listener count, hopefully permanently. And so far, it's looking like I have permanently increased my baseline on Spotify. I went from around 800 to 900 streams per day to over 3,000 streams per day on Spotify in just a short time. Okay, so let's get to the root of all this. Why are so many musicians approaching marketing from a different perspective? And why is it that when I run what I consider to be a successful campaign, in the eyes of someone else, seen as an illusion of growth instead of the real marketing that it is? And I think the key here is that traffic is not the same as fans. What I showed you in my Spotify for Artists, what streaming data is, listener data and streaming data is just traffic. It's just getting your music in front of people and allowing them to decide if they like the song or not. And here's the thing. I don't think everyone who's heard my song actually liked my song. I think that's pretty normal because the odds are when you're marketing is that some people will turn into fans, but most won't. One isn't better than the other. They're just different. And here's an analogy that I think will help. Because imagine that you're playing at a coffee shop and there's only 20 people in the room, but you have the opportunity after the show to have a conversation with like 12 of them, and you personally invite them to your next show and they become super fans because you were able to spend that time with them. So that's like the meta ads analogy, right? Because meta ads are more expensive. You're paying more for that interaction with that potential fan. So there's a smaller pool of people, but the engagement is so much higher. Now, imagine that you're opening for a major artist on tour and you're performing in front of the 20,000 people and you're up there, and sure, some people in the audience, they're just drinking their beer, or maybe they're getting food, or maybe they didn't even show up yet because they're there for the headliner, but you still had the opportunity to perform in front of 20,000 people, even if a lot of them aren't there for you. And maybe they never would have been if you were trying to draw them on your own merit, because you're just starting out. If you were to book your own show without being an opener, you would just be doing that coffee house gig. But I'll tell you what, opening for that major artist is still a great idea, and that's the playlist analogy. Playlists get you in front of way more people way faster, and sure, they're less engaged. You don't have the opportunity to strike up a conversation with everyone in that venue if it's a stadium, algorithm. And just like with playlists, having the opportunity to get in front of that large group of people is going to be a huge benefit, because marketing isn't about converting every single person into a fan perfectly with 100% conversion rate. It's about getting in front of more people so that they have the opportunity to discover you. And there's an extra bonus on Spotify, because if you trigger the algorithm, Spotify is now acting as your discovery agent independently of anything that you do, and you're going to get streams and more exposure for free if you do trigger the algorithm, which I think happens a lot faster with playlisting. So remember, traffic is always going to be useful, whether it's a television interview, whether it's getting a blog feature, whether it's going on tour with a bigger artist. All of those opportunities are also temporary, right? The traffic isn't going to last forever. You're only going to get that exposure while you're on stage, or while you're on air, or while you're actually live on TV. And the same is true with playlists. It's even true with meta ads too. It's not about will the traffic last forever, or have I somehow beat the system and I now have an infinite traffic glitch. That doesn't exist, by the way. The real goal is to make the most use of the traffic if you're able to get it. And that's why I love sharing my analytics, because we're going to dive into that exact question right now. So here's my Spotify for artists, and what I have in front of me is the beginning of my song release up until today. And just as a quick overview, and then we'll dive into specific details, I started with a very low algorithm. I only had about 20 listeners per day from the algorithm. And after my song came out and I got on some playlists, my algorithm kicked in to a way higher number. By the way, the algorithm is the pink line, and on May 28th, I was only getting 20 streams from the algorithm, but this week I now have 459 streams from the algorithm. So that's over a 20x increase of algorithmic traction after the highest peak. In the highest peak, I got over 6,000 streams pretty consistently day after day from the algorithm, which I consider it to be a total bonus. That's the whole idea of wanting to trigger the algorithm. In fact, if I go over to my total playlist for the song, you can see my biggest traffic source was the Spotify algorithm. It was the mixes, and it was also the radio algorithm. And so when the commenter is like, oh, your engagement rate is really low, it's like, I'm getting these streams from the Spotify algorithm, man. I don't really care about engagement rate, because this is Spotify showing my music to people. And yeah, not everyone is going to love my song, but some people will. And I think the conversation around engagement rate, it has its place. But just as a quick gut check, this is nearly 70,000 streams for free, which is amazing, and I would not say no to that. I don't think any artist in their right mind would. Now let's look at the lasting result from this, because yes, algorithms turn on and off. Playlists, they come and they go, just like all traffic sources. Even meta ads, if you don't keep paying that bill every day, your ads are just going to turn off, right? So what is the lasting impact from this marketing? Well, I like to look into the playlist ads, because playlists tend to lead to more playlists. And over the course of this month, I actually got added to 4,700 additional playlists roughly. That's amazing, because my song is now in 4,700 places where it's going to get streamed over and over again beyond this initial campaign push. Another bit of lasting data is the saves I got over the course of the month, over 600 saves. Now you might not be pleased with the save rate, but remember, 70,000 of those streams are from the algorithm, so I'm not sure what to tell you at that point. And then in addition, the monthly active listeners tripled. So I started with about 1,700 monthly active listeners, and by the end of the month, I'm at around 5,000. So that tripled, and my super listeners went from 7 to 58. Now, I'll be totally honest, I don't know how many super listeners I should have. You can let me know in the comments how many you think I should have after releasing one song after a 4-year break. So I would love to hear your thoughts. But just from a number standpoint, I have nearly 8 times the super listeners I had before, so that sounds good to me. So what's the takeaway from this experiment, and what am I going to do next? I would summarize it like this. If you want to grow on Spotify, then get more traffic on Spotify. But traffic is just the starting line of marketing, okay? If you can get traffic, you're doing the right thing. And if you have a brand and music that resonates, that traffic will result in long-term growth. And you do get to decide if you want to have that traffic through meta ads. It's more expensive. You're winning people over one at a time. You have to convert them over from social media. And sure, it's a lot more engaged. But I would encourage you to do your own accounting and do your own tests and see if you can trigger the algorithm like how I did and get 70,000 free streams from Meta ads in 3 weeks. See if it could happen, and if you can do it, drop your results in the comments below, because this video isn't about how I did it the one way that's the only right way. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that different traffic styles are going to lead to different types of engagement rates and different results. And I feel like for my goal of triggering the algorithm, it worked really well. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. And I'll just leave this on the screen before we go. This is a client. I will not reveal the name of this artist. They are signed to a major label and they have a total audience of 12 million people. And as you can see in the chart here, their monthly active listeners is just 4%. Now, does that mean that they're a failure because their engagement rate is so low? Absolutely not. Spotify's actually pushing their music out into the world and they're getting real opportunities. They're getting collabs. They're obviously signed to a label, like I just said. We just have to make sure that we're aware that a lot of the metrics on Spotify are just traffic metrics, not fan base metrics. That's what monthly listeners are. Monthly listeners are not a fan base metric. What monthly listeners are is a 28-day history of what your traffic was. And traffic can come from playlists. It can come from the algorithm. It depends if you're on tour. It depends if you're collaborating and other artists are sending traffic to you. It depends on a variety of things. And what I've done is showed you my little experiment with one traffic source, playlists. And the results are exactly consistent with what major artists at major labels are getting on their catalogs as well. Next, I'm going to run meta ads on my song using the same level of transparency that I'm showing you in these videos. And I think it'll be really fun to compare the results side by side and see which metrics are affected by which campaign types. And before we do that, this is a great video to watch where I compare playlisting and meta ads and what you should expect from each campaign type as far as what metrics they actually affect, because meta ads doesn't grow every metric and playlists don't grow every metric. They kind of are optimized for certain results. So check out this video right here to prepare, and I'll see you in the next video.